Hello, everyone. I'm Mirella from Yoga Vibe, and you are with Yoga Vibe podcast. Our guest today is Werner, one of the most recognizable, famous yoga teachers in the world. It's really nice to have you here. There's so much we could learn, and your presence is amazing. It brought so much life into our studio at this difficult time. So, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Um, yes, we are so grateful for you for coming exactly during this time. How has been this year for you so far?
I think this year's been pretty crazy for everybody since the lockdown and COVID and all that. And yeah, I pretty much had to cancel my entire year, one of my teacher trainings, almost every single one of my workshops, except for this one, which I felt I was really happy to have this opportunity to teach. I hadn't taught since February, since before the lockdown, and
Yeah, there are like definitely workshops to remember. Did you miss teaching? Like, it didn't
yes,
look so because
yeah,
pretty good, but
I love teaching. I really believe that teaching is my purpose. I mean, we get to choose our purpose of what we're doing and how we find our meaning and stuff. And being able to teach and share my practice really fulfills me, like my higher self, I should say. So not having that definitely felt like a bit of a loss. And then also, I I really miss the community that yoga provides, to be able to be around people that are like-minded and conscious and looking towards making the world a better place. And so to be surrounded by those kind of people when it's been so long has been really amazing. And then just being back in Bulgaria, this is, I think, my third time,
your fifth maybe?
fifth. I don't even know how many.
That's how what we counted.
Is this my fifth time
Yeah, I
back
think
here?
so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, I guess my fifth time back here. And when people ask me like amazing places to go to in the world, I always put Bulgaria up there. I think it is a very underrated country as compared to most countries, especially with the nature that you have around Sofia and even the city here. And it's I've always felt very warm and welcomed by the people. So it's been great to be back, and it's been great to be here and to have the opportunity to teach.
Yeah. Sounds great to hear that. Um, well, we know that you have really diverse background in lots of sports. Do you think they somehow prepared you for yoga, and how did they fit with your yoga path after that? And maybe they're still part of your life, of course.
Yoga is I mean, yoga is a lot of things, and I talked about it over this weekend through the workshops. What I really feel like the heart of yoga is about connection and relationships, and it's the connection of the mind, body, and spirit, and then also the connection between everybody else. And then we have all these tools that bring us to yoga. And so a lot of people just define yoga as maybe the asana, and we say like, oh, what brought you into yoga. But for me, yoga is more about a culture and a lifestyle and a way of living and a way of thinking. And movement definitely helps us because we are our bodies. I had a teacher. Well, there's like the famous, I'm not my body. I'm the knower of my body. I'm not my thoughts. I'm the knower of my thoughts. I'm not my emotions. I'm the knower of my emotions. All these things, and it's to understand that we're not these things. I had a teacher that said, to understand that you are not your body, you first have to understand that you are your body. To understand that you're not your thoughts, you first have to understand that you are your thoughts. And there's always going to be this duality, and it's the duality or the polarity of thoughts and ideas and things and concepts that actually give everything meaning, right? To have good, you have to have bad. Without bad, there is no good. Without good, there is no bad. And then, so yoga is really, yeah, like I was saying, we have the tools of yoga, and asana being one of them, meditation being one, pranayama being one, the way that we follow the yamas and niyamas, or the philosophy being another. I very much came into yoga, like most people, through the asana, through the movement, and because I did wrestling and martial arts and a lot of different types of body movement things, it gave me a large, what I kind of called like a kinetic fluency or movement fluency. So like I had a lot of tools already to move forward, and I never wanted to be inside of the box of the yoga box of movement, which is very much linear movements that are trying to put us into shapes where the goals are those shapes. And I think the modern yoga, as it moves forward and it evolves, and everything is evolving and changing, and as it has to be, coming into yoga with these ideas that I'm not limited by whatever 990 something poses that are kind of recognized out there, but there's an infinite number of poses and an infinite number of ways to connect those things, and to use it is really been helpful for my teaching. So yes, to answer your question, yeah, definitely having different kind of movement backgrounds has helped, because it's the body moves, and it doesn't matter if it's yoga, calisthenics, surfing, skateboarding, skydiving, right? We have so many different joints in the body. The joints only move in certain different ways, but because of that, we have unlimited combinations of how we can move.
Thank you. Do you remember your first yoga class? Was it good? Or you didn't like it and then you came back and started liking it?
So my first kind of yoga class was back in either 2000 or 2001. I was practicing martial arts, and one day a week we did yoga. And so there was the martial arts philosophy, which is about discipline and humility and self-restraint and all these things, all very valuable, a little bit different than the yoga philosophy. But then there was the yoga movements. So because of that, I really don't think I really did yoga until about 2009. And I remember getting into this hot yoga class, and it was massive studio, and there was only 2 studios in my hometown, and they're kind of competing studios. Just like a lot of people, and it was sweaty and hot and kind of dark and really, really hard. And I just started doing handstands, and the teacher was cueing inversions, and I was like, wow, this is you could do inversions as an adult and do all. It felt right. But even then, it wasn't until I did a teacher training that I started getting more into the philosophy and really like yoga, how I think yoga is. So to say when was my first real yoga class, I don't.
That's just how you felt about it, because I remember I didn't like my first yoga class.
No?
Yeah, no, but I just I tried many times through many different years, and at some point I just got stuck and couldn't stop.
Right. I think for people, if I went into a yoga class and my first yoga class was like a yin class or a beginner class or something that was slow, I would have never came back. But because my first yoga class was an advanced level 2, 3 and very strong and powerful, and it kind of spoke to that strong energy that I had at the time, then
actually I was gonna bring you to that, because I have so many friends and I tell them, come to yoga classes and you really enjoy them, and they're like, yes, I'm sure it's amazing, but I prefer something a little bit more intensive. And I'm sure they don't know you or your practices, but there is this cliche that yoga is slow and it's practiced by old men with beards and alone, and they're just one with the universe and don't need to put much effort or exercise. And in the same time, exercise is so important to contemporary stressed out people with office jobs. And so that kind of people, what would you tell them? Maybe, I don't know if you know some, or you just leave them. Yeah.
I mean, they're not wrong. There's yoga is definitely practiced by old men with beards and practiced by young, flexible women, and everybody in between. It really depends on what your idea of yoga is and who you're trying to learn yoga from. I think for whatever you want or whatever you're looking for, there's a teacher out there that is going to offer that for you. And so there is definitely easy yoga there's yoga where you just sing. There's laughter yoga, which So what I would tell them is whatever you're looking for, if you want hard yoga, it's there for you. And really the only way to know it is to experience it, right? And so you can't judge something without experiencing it first,
Yeah,
right? So it's
exactly.
like, well, how do you know it's not hard? And I used to teach at a CrossFit gym in LA and have all these big buff guys coming in and they couldn't hold downward facing dog because they just didn't have the shoulder mobility, and all the movement that they were used to doing was very dynamic, and so they didn't have that static strength. They weren't able to hold a body position for any amount of time without dying. So for them, yoga was even harder for them than CrossFit.
Yeah, yeah, we can imagine that. So, what does your practice look like, and what are you looking for in your practice?
That's a good question. What am I looking for? What does my practice look like too? That's kind of an interesting one as well, because I don't know if my practice looks like anything. I mean, it sometimes, like, I have a daily meditation and pranayama practice, and
Yes.
that's the most consistent part of my yoga practice, even more consistent than my asana practice.
Yeah.
So if you said, what does your yoga practice look like? And I'd say, well, my yoga practice probably looks something like me sitting in a cross-legged position with my chest elevated, the crown of my head up, and my eyes closed. And I'm doing something around that. That's probably the majority of my physical practice. The other part of my physical practice looks like movement
Yeah.
and handstands and sometimes flows, and
Yeah.
then sometimes it's just trying to be a better person.
So that's a little bit hard question. Can you try? Of course, it's not going to be right, but just try to define yoga just with 3 words. What is yoga with 3 words, and what it is not with 3 words?
I'll give like 3 words what I think yoga is, and then I'm going to
It's
talk
not
about
complete,
what
yeah.
yoga is not.
Okay.
Not 3 words. I won't answer it that way.
Okay.
So yoga is connection. It's relationship. It's truth, I guess. You could say it that way. Like, yoga is really about removing the illusion of separation and seeing things really how they are, which is everything is connected. So going back to that connection. The second we start saying what yoga is not is the second that we start to move down the wrong path. Because, and just in the philosophy of yoga, if things are whole, that means that it's everything, right? It's encompassing of all things. So as soon as I draw a line in the sand, or as soon as I put a box around something, as soon as I start defining something, I'm creating separation.
Yeah.
And that separation is the opposite of what yoga is. So I guess one of those words that we could say what yoga is not is separation.
Yeah.
Right? Yoga is not attachment. Because if yoga is moving towards truth, how things are, how everything is one, united. I mean, yoga just means union, essentially.
Exactly.
And if you are connected, you can't be attached. Connection is fluid. Attachment is finite. Right? I like this here. I like this exactly how it is. As soon as it moves, then it's not how it was, and I've lost that attachment. Or if you have an attachment to a person, that person makes you happy. Right? And so I want that person to continue to make me happy. And as soon as they stop making me happy, or they leave, or they die, or something like that, then there's a separation. But after that separation is gone, what's left over is the connection. Like, if you've ever lost someone close to you that you love, the first part that you feel is the separation. You feel that attachment, which doesn't mean that that's not real, but it's not real in a sense, because that'll eventually fade. That pain of the separation fades, and then over time, truth presents itself. The truth will always outlast anything else. Whatever's a lie will eventually go away because it's not true. And so then what you're left with in that place of that loss is the love and the connection. So trying to define what yoga is not really useful. Just understanding what yoga is will bring you down that path.
Yeah.
But trying to look at something and go, that's not yoga, that's not yoga, that's not yoga.
Yeah, it's a tricky question.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have a good answer. Well, we all make mistakes, and that's how we learn and how we grow. If you could give advice to your younger self or younger practitioners, but not very concrete one, not what style to do or what thing to do, but what to look for in what they do, like a feeling, like the what not to put with it, like not to put continue with compromises. Is there something like this you would give advice to your younger self, or you just leave it as it is?
That's a the truth is we can never go back.
Yeah.
Right? So you can only give advice to other people. You can't give advice to yourself because you only get one chance of this. So it's I think it's more valuable. Like, I understand the purpose of the question, like, what advice would I give to somebody that is moving up? And it's hard to know because without the mistakes that we've made, we can't really learn. But I think the less that the more positive influence you could be on other people and the kinder that you could be to other people, I would, just focus on the kindness and let things go. I think my younger self, maybe I would try to have less preferences. Because the more preferences you have, the more you're attached to things being a certain way, and the less possibilities you have for being happy.
And the more you suffer.
Yeah.
Okay, let's come back down to earth. Again, why do you love so much handstands, apart from being so good at them?
I don't think I'm very good at handstands.
Okay, but you love them.
I do love them.
And they're important for you, aren't they?
It's just as important as any other movement.
Okay.
I think people get focused in on the handstands because not a lot of people can do handstands, or they're challenging, or people are afraid of going upside down and all this. I've just always enjoyed them because, well, in the beginning it was something that was fun, and then I realized it was something that kept me present. Then I realized that it wasn't the handstands that kept me present; it was my intention that kept me present, and the handstand was just a tool. Now it's just something that teaches me patience and perseverance, and also it's really good for my body, and I enjoy doing them. But like through lockdown, the whole lockdown, I barely did any handstands. Yeah, I did more chaturangas, and like I was on my feet more, or on all fours more than I was on just my hands. And so it changes for me. It changes on like how I'm feeling. And I really just try to honor my body, like what my body needs or what I'm feeling. Sometimes it's handstands and sometimes it's not. And as long as I'm moving, that's what's important, because we get old because we stop moving.
Yeah, movement equals life.
Right. We don't stop moving So I don't really want to get old because I'm not ready to die just yet. And even when I do die, I want to be like Iyengar and be able to do 108 dropbacks on my 90th birthday, rather than being stuck and confined to a prison of a body. Because without our body, we are imprisoned.
Yeah, that sounds like a good goal.
It's a daily.
Yeah, you know what to do.
Yeah.
We sometimes argue with some of the people in the yoga studios. Some think this is true, some think it's not. Can you increase flexibility and strength at the same time, or are they just going like on a lever in the opposite direction?
Yes. Yeah, the simple answer is yes, of course you can.
You can both. You can improve them both if you work in the proper way and you grow.
Why not?
Because sometimes when you focus on stabilization, some people say that like you start to limit your flexibility to be more stable and straight.
Have you ever seen a gymnast?
Yes.
Especially like a male gymnast doing rings?
Yes.
That could do over splits and everything else, and then they're just jacked with muscles and being able to do ridiculous things. I consider myself both strong and flexible.
Yeah.
I could do the splits, I could do handstand push-ups. Right? It's they don't necessarily counteract each other. In fact, I would say they're more synergistic than counteracted, because if you are flexible, so if I'm able to lift weight, or let's say do like an overhead press, right? And going back to like those CrossFitter guys, they had a lot of strength, but with that strength also came a lot of resistance, because strength could equal resistance. So if you don't add in the flexibility, you have to have even more muscle mass to overcome that resistance. You could actually be stronger with less muscle mass if you have more flexibility. So if you are able to work the two together, you will be both stronger and more flexible. If you just work flexibility and you don't work strength, more likely you'll be more flexible. But if you just work strength and flexibility, I think you'll end up being stronger than if you don't. Now, with that, there are certain things that are going to limit you, because a lot of movements rely not so much on strength but on elasticity. So if you are looking to be really quick and bouncy, if you're doing like high jump, or if you're a sprinter or even a long distance runner, having more flexibility is going to be a detriment to whatever kind of movement that you're doing, because you lose that tightness, that rebound, the more flexible you are. So it's really important to keep that elasticity. But that doesn't mean you won't have the range of motion.
Yeah.
And maybe you won't.
Thank you. Without effort and some amount of pain we cause ourselves, it's really hard to grow. But then also in a lot of yoga classes, and even in the niyamas, there is the principle of no pain. What is your attitude towards pain?
I've never read in the yamas and niyamas to say anything about no pain. I've never read anything in any of the sutras or any of the Vedas or anything like that says no pain. To be born into life is pain.
Okay.
When you come into this world, you experience pain. But pain doesn't mean it's bad. Right? We discussed this over the weekend. Pain is not good or bad. Pain is a sensation that we feel through the body. Pain is what keeps us safe. You know, if I hold my hand over here like this, eventually I feel pain and it tells me to move my hand away from the fire. Without that pain, I would injure my hand. So you have to have pain.
Yeah, but to progress, you need to cause sometimes a little bit more pain to yourself, or some.
In English you have stress, but there's eustress and distress.
Okay.
So these are two different types of stress. Eustress is where you stress something in a way that leads to positive growth, and then there's distress, where you stress something that leads to breakdown or injury or mental pain, or So if I'm studying, right, that's actually eustress. Like I'm working my mind and all that stuff, and I learn from that. Right? But then if I go through like a heartbreak or something, that could be distress, and I break down for that. But I could also change that distress into eustress based on how I view it. So it's really about our perception of pain, whether or not there is pain. It's how do we view that pain? How do we use it? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we as you're born, you're going to experience two things: pain and pleasure. We kind of are conditioned to avoid pain and to seek out pleasure, but pleasure is always going to be fleeting. It's never lasting. It's unfulfilling, and we want to avoid pain. In the kleshas we have abhinavesha and devesha. The avoidance of pain and the avoidance of death. Right? That doesn't say that they're bad, but these are the things that cause suffering. So to avoid pain will cause suffering. To avoid death will cause suffering. Pain doesn't cause suffering. And I think that's something what people confuse.
Yeah. Thank you for this answer. What advice would you give to people who are considering whether or not they're ready for their first teacher training? Um,
Everyone's ready for their first teacher
Everyone.
training.
Should they have ever practiced yoga? Maybe not.
It doesn't matter, because what you learn in your teacher training, at least if it's a good teacher training, and there are good teacher trainings and bad teacher trainings out there. A bad teacher training is going to teach you asana,
Yeah.
right? And that's all they focus on. A good teacher training is going to teach you yoga, and those are different things. Asana is not yoga. Meditation is not yoga. Pranayama is not yoga.
Yeah.
They're pathway. They're the tools of yoga. So they allow you to do that. So if you take a teacher training that doesn't teach you yoga, they just teach you one of the tools, whatever. I knew some teacher trainings that were from very respected teachers, but they're like zero philosophy teacher training. And for me, that's not a teacher training. I think like my 200-hour teacher training is really teaching people how to teach yoga, not teach asana. How to teach yoga. And teaching yoga is about establishing connections and using the tools like asana. Asana is a tool that helps us establish our connection to ourself. Right? Pranayama is a tool that helps us establish our connection to ourself and maybe the universe. Meditation is a tool that helps us establish a connection to our higher self. The philosophy is a tool that helps us establish our connection to others. Right? So it's all about understanding how do we use these tools for yoga. And unfortunately, you could go and take yoga classes for a long time and never really experience yoga based on what's being taught in that class. And that's all up to the teacher. So hopefully teacher trainings, because it's a longer format, we have a little bit of time to sit down and you talk about philosophy, especially if it's a yoga alliance. Everyone's anti-yoga alliance, but one of the things that is positive about yoga alliance is it requires so many hours of philosophy. And that's really important, because without having those hours, you don't get to, I think anybody that practices yoga should know what the 8 limbs of yoga are. They should know about the yamas and niyamas, obviously, in the 8 limbs. They should know about the kleshas. They should know about the doshas and all these different yoga concepts that are in there, because like I said, part of yoga is a culture, and we need to understand that culture when we're in it. So when we grow yoga into the modern world, that we don't lose the culture. It's just like, Bulgaria has a really strong culture, right? And that's passed down. That's the responsibility of the older generation, is to pass that culture down so that you don't lose it. And one of the things that I think yoga really is facing right now is losing its culture.
Yeah.
Because it's just becoming like, Lululemon pants or whatever, and doing the splits and handstands and getting sweaty and being fit and being seen and Instagram and all that. And so that I feel we risk losing what yoga is, or not understanding what yoga is. So
actually, this was one of my following questions. What's the relation between? Is there any connection? Do these modern yoga classes, do they fit somehow even in a small tie, to the yoga framework? Although that's also very hard to define, because the boundaries are really,
of course,
smudgy.
If yoga is everything, everything fits inside of it.
Yes. But I don't know. Maybe asana classes, the modern trendy ones, are a way to get people into the halls, and then maybe some of them will continue with other kind of.
What is so great about asana is, for people, especially people that have never moved or never felt connected, that it brings you into a somatic experience. It brings you into your body. And so whether you want to or not, you already start to find that connection. And that was true for me. My first asana classes that I took, that power yoga stuff, that was really like single leg down dog, knee to nose 10 times, shift forward chaturanga 10 times, hold warrior 2 for 3 minutes. Like, it brings you into your body, which already starts with that connection, because the mind and the body are one. I've talked to many people that they don't feel that way, and that's because they haven't had that connection. But it doesn't mean it has to be through asana. It could be through any kind of movement. But yoga comes with the intention of it. And even the most physical yoga class that you take, the teacher most likely is still going to talk about the breath, and they're still going to talk about feeling into the postures, or they're going to do these things. Not all, but hopefully people seek out good teachers that are sharing this.
Do you remember when you felt ready to teach, and how has your teaching evolved? Because we're constantly growing in our practice, in our teaching, in our lives.
I took a teacher training after practicing yoga for about a year, and I had no intention of being a teacher. I just wanted to deepen my practice. And really, I loved yoga so much. And I was like, okay, I was a firefighter paramedic, and I had some time. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go take this teacher training. Went down there, and I remember teaching my first sun salutations, and how fun that was. And then teaching a whole class to a group, and being able to kind of orchestrate something. Teaching yoga is like telling a story. And it's everything from the lights to the music to the way that you use your voice, the way that you move around the room, the way that you connect with students. And it felt just very liberating and freeing, and like I was able to express myself in a way that I had never expressed myself before, and I fell in love with it. I was like, this is awesome. I never planned on being just a yoga teacher, or but just a yoga teacher. I never planned on being a yoga teacher. But after I taught that first class, I was like, I'm going to go back and I'm going to just teach some yoga on the side for fun. And for about 3 years, I taught 3 classes or 4 classes a week alongside my regular job. And I just loved it. And I didn't care about getting paid. I didn't care if people showed up. I was just having a good time. And because of my love for it, I wanted to grow. Right? I love sharing these things with my students, and when you share everything you have, then you're like, okay, I got to share more. So that if I'm going to share more, that means I need to work on knowing more and doing more and all these things. And so then it became this journey towards studying philosophy, and movement. But for me, in the beginning, it was just like anatomy and movement, because I was a paramedic. I had a background in anatomy already. I already understood the body, and so I offered these things, but I didn't feel confident enough to share philosophy, because so I wanted to share those things. So the teachers that I loved the most were not the teachers that taught the best asana, but they were the teachers that made me think in a profound way. And so then I started listening to people like Joseph Campbell and Alan Watts, and then lots of other teachers that are living as well, and just being fascinated by this different way of thinking that was something that I'd never experienced, and I'd never been taught from anywhere else. I was never taught that we're all connected. I was never taught that life is whole, or there's not two, there's just one. Like that concept didn't make any sense to me. I was never taught how to free myself from suffering. And not that I've freed myself from suffering, but I'm definitely suffer much less post-yoga than pre-yoga. My relationships with other people are better. How I treat people are better because of how I treat myself is better, and that's all come through yoga, not just the asana. The asana led me down those paths. So yeah, I think when you really love something, you just hunger for it, and you thirst after that knowledge. And so like last night I watched 2 hours of dissection, just because I want to be able to offer more and more and more. But the problem is then I get into a workshop, as you saw, I'm just trying to, I have so much that I want to give and so little time to give it. And then people are like, oh my God, I can't drink this much, It's like being fed with a fire hose.
Yes, that's a very quick question. Do you know all the muscles and all the bones by Latin names?
Yes.
Everyone, each one.
Yeah, I do.
Yes, no question.
Yeah, I do know all the muscles and the bones in the body. I know how they're all connected. I know actually, if we talk about them through the myofascial meridians, I know how they're connected through tension. I know that their actions. I know their insertion points. I know the different parts of the bone, not just the bones themselves, but the different parts of the bones. Right?
Yeah.
But for me, it's not just like memorizing. Oh, this is how it is. It's for me, it's the movement. It's the foundation of movements, the foundation of life, and so it's interesting to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's for me, it's not memorizing. It's just like this is my art. This is my profession, and anatomy is one of those tools of my profession. And so, I mean, it's taken me a long time to learn all of it, but I would just start with something like the shoulder, go through
Yeah.
the rotator cuff, and then I'd go deeper into it. Then I'd be like, okay, how's the rotator cuff connected into the chest, or how's it connected down into the arm, or what is that relationship, and then how does that move down, and if I do this, what does this do? If I do this, what is moving? If I reach my arm forward here, what is it doing? If I move my arm forward with my pinky forward, or my thumb forward, or if I do this to my fingers, does that have an effect or a change? I don't know if you remember, like we did like this thing, like
Yes.
where I said push your three fingers together, and that created stability. So not only on a muscular level, but a neuromuscular level, like how does this affect my feeling of support? And so all these now become somatic tools. So as a teacher, my job is to be intellectual and to understand the movement, to understand why I'm teaching you something. But as a student, even when I'm a student, I rely on the teacher to let me have the experience of just being in my body. Right? The teacher has a job of being in their head. The student has a job of being in their body.
Yeah. That's good. You inspire so many people. Who does inspire you? Or like some of the
Uh,
main.
yes, I have lots of teachers. It depends on how we think about being inspired, right? Like as far as like movement, that it changes so often, like what I'm going after, and usually like who really inspires me is people like kind of outside of yoga that are doing cool things. Uh, I don't know. What are you looking for specifically? You
Nothing.
just names, just name drop some people.
Or what kind of people? It doesn't matter.
I like people that are. I mean, I still like most of the philosophy I listen to are people that have passed on. I try to read lots of books, and like I was really kind of inspired lately by Stephen Porges and the polyvagal theory, and I spent a lot of time studying into that because it was just a fascinating thing how our autonomic nervous system works with emotion. So that was kind of like an inspiring thing. Or people that are kind of getting into like biohacking and breath work, and like Stig Sverensson, who's a free diver, all the stuff that he's done around breath work and breath holding is people that push the limits of what the body can do, or push the limits of what the mind can do, that are going beyond, because that allows everyone to grow. Right? If we're the when you have a frontier, that
Yeah.
you always want to move that frontier
Yeah.
further,
A bit further. Just a little bit.
just a little bit. And so, I want to be on the frontier, where it's scary, where you don't know what's on the other side, like that, and the other people that are there on that frontier. That's
It's like surfing at the
Yeah.
edge.
it's exciting.
Yeah. When I mentioned the verb inspire, I always remember its etymology, like coming from Latin. Like spiro means blow, breathe, and in the same like spirit.
Right.
So it's really amazing. It's not just in English. In many other languages, the words for spirit and for breathe, respirate, are very
The same.
connected, the same root. So I wanted just to
Inspiration is also if I breathe in, it's an inspiration. I
yes.
inspire or expire.
Yes, exactly.
Inhalation, inspiration.
And it's amazing how words work all around, and we use them all our lives, and we never actually understand some deeper connections between, which are even in our everyday language, between concepts of life. It's amazing. And I know you're preparing a book on breathing.
I wrote it.
Yeah. Okay. It's done. Yeah. It's so. When should we be expecting?
It's actually on pre-order now.
Yeah. It's already on pre-order.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I should have read the email better before the workshop, but it's actually, you could pre-order it now on Amazon.
On Amazon. Okay. So what's the name of the book?
The name is Illuminated Breath.
Illuminated Breath. So it seems you have several programs and workshops on breathing, on pranayama. Is that a change, or it has always been part of your teaching? And are you moving towards more breathing practices and emphasizing more the importance of prana and breath in our life?
Always been a part of since I started yoga. Actually, since I did my teacher training, which was about a year into yoga, it's been a part of my practice, and it's been something that I've known is important, and something that I've studied from the beginning along with everything else. And so much so that when I was offered an opportunity by my publisher to write a book, we talked about a bunch of different concepts of what to write on, and for me the clearest thing to write about was breathing. And I had a system of breath sequencing that I developed that I wanted to share, and I also felt like seeking after breath, like when you want to learn something, you really go through all these sources, and it was so difficult for me to get the answers that I wanted. I had to go through so many different resources, and then the discrepancies, and then things that just didn't make sense, and the dogma in it, and then just the rhetoric that came, like, you know the word rhetoric, like it's like basically it's like words that, like, if I tell you something but it doesn't have any basis, there's no facts behind it, right? It's more like opinion. And that seems like to be like the majority of the stuff that's written about pranayama. It tells you it does all these things, but where is the science in that? And I'm someone that it needs the science. And even the philosophy and the spirituality of breathing it correlates directly with the Western part, the Western science that we know. And through like all my studies, I saw how these things came together, and I wanted to be able to share something where the East and the West were really connected and unified as one, and show that they're not different, that they're the same. And then also, I know how powerful a tool breathing is on every level, from physical to emotional to understanding your higher self and your purpose. And yet, breathing being as important as eating, as important, if not more, than moving and sleeping. And yet people have no idea how to breathe.
Yeah.
We're not taught how to breathe.
Exactly.
Because we do it. And so so I wanted to teach people how to breathe in a way that makes their life better.
Yeah, it's a very noble goal. It's a good aim to teach people that, because it's so good to them, changes their life. Very often we hear from everywhere how the mind and the body are connected, but having so much experience in teaching yoga, meeting so many students, and also having also your medical background and expanding this knowledge, can you say you could see that some strong emotions could actually leave physical imprint in our bodies? And is there a proof that's happening?
Of course, because you move based on your emotions, right? How I hold my body, how I walk, my posture, all that is actually as a result of how I feel emotionally. When I get hurt or injured, I have a feeling that's inside, but I also have a response, a physical response, a closing, a protecting. And these are all formed in our posture. and how we close off to the world. And so if I close myself off emotionally, my body shows that emotional closing. If I open up myself emotionally, my body also shows it through my posture, how I interact. And so we could change our emotions by changing our body shape. And those things are connected, they're linked. That's the whole concept of yoga, the mind, body, breath, right? It's one. Our emotions, first of all, like, our emotions are controlled by our breathing, right? And our breathing is controlled by our emotions. They're the same. And both of those affect how the body is. And so if you have an emotional experience, you might just want to curl up onto the floor and hold in here so that you feel safe and protected. Well, if that continues to happen, the body, especially if we're talking about the fascia, which is the fabric that holds the shape of the body, it's not the bones. The bones just kind of push things apart. The fascia actually keeps our shape. Well, that is formed by our movement. And so if we do the same patterns, it becomes permanent. You could have adhesions between the layers of the muscles, or you see people that with hunchbacks or all kinds of weird posture stuff. There's something emotional in there. And so when you release those things, then there's also an emotional release. And sometimes it's painful. I don't remember where I read it, but who was it? I think it was Michael Singer, the author Michael Singer. He said if something's painful going in, it's going to be painful coming out.
Yeah.
And because of this, people hold on to that pain, which creates even more postural problems because they don't want to let it go. They'd rather create a box around it. And in the Untethered Soul, he talks about having a thorn in your hand. Instead of removing the thorn, you build something around it, and then your whole life becomes about avoiding that pain.
Let's excuse you.
Yeah.
You seem to have achieved a lot, maybe everything, for some people's goals. What motivates you to keep growing?
We talked about in the first day of the workshop. I think it was the first day. We talked about tapas and santosha. And the tapas being our inner fire, our desire to grow, and then the santosha just to be content with whatever you have. And I really try to live my life by that. I don't have any goals other than just giving my best. Just always trying to grow, because the opposite of growth is death. And so that keeps me from not growing.
Yeah.
Or I didn't really say that. It keeps me from not wanting to grow, maybe. But yeah, so I don't have, like, I'm not trying to accomplish anything.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be the best self that I could be for that day, and be happy with who that is at the end of the day.
Good.
I don't think we could ask for anything more, or we shouldn't.
Yeah.
How can you be better than your best self? How can you do more than your best?
No.
And does it matter the future if you're not giving your best now?
Yeah. You seem pretty competitive in nature, but what do you think?
Why do I seem competitive?
I don't know, it's just a feeling.
Competitive with other people or competitive with myself?
There's the question I was going to ask you. Do you think being competitive is bad or good, and when it's good and when it's bad?
I don't think I'm competitive.
In yoga classes, very often some people look someone to the left, someone to the right, and then they look different, and they want to be more like someone who looks more advanced. And they try to push themselves, but maybe they don't understand or they aren't ready, and it sometimes leads to injury. But of course, knowing someone is better, it might give you an idea where you can grow. But so it's just do you think it's good or bad to compare yourself with others?
I am definitely not competitive at all. I used to be competitive when I played competitive sports.
Okay.
But it was like trying to be the best at that sport. Yoga is not a sport. And so when I see somebody that is better at something than me, I inspire to learn from them. Not to be better from them or to be able to do whatever there is, but just to be able to gather that knowledge from them. If I see somebody that I can inspire, because I might be better at something than them, then I want to share to bring them up. Ultimately, like as a teacher, I want all my students to surpass me in every way. And that's I think what a good teacher wants is, so I don't there's teachers out there that teach that don't share everything and don't give everything because they always want to be the best. They always want to do that. And if you tell by taking my classes, I don't want that. I want everybody to do their best and succeed and to be better than me. And I think really that's how we grow, because we all leave this world at some time, but then others are going to continue on. And so if we really want the world to be a better place when you leave it, you have to help the people that are coming behind you be better people.
Yeah, I think this is a very good message, especially in this year when so many people may need more help and may get into like become
We all need help, and I think that's important to recognize. There's nobody out there that doesn't need help with something. And whether we know what that help is or not, when someone helps us in a way, we realize that it's there, and that there was something that, yeah.
Thank you very much. I think this is my final question. We are really hopeful that we'll see you again in Bulgaria, maybe soon. I don't know.
I'll come back.
Yeah, that's great news. Thank you very much, Dion, and I wish you good time till your stay ends, and then good time when you go home. And thank you very much for listening.